My name is Maya Reed, and I'm 26 years old. I never imagined that the triumphant return from my first truly successful business trip would end with me staring at my life, packed away in a series of cheap black garbage bags. They were lined up at the end of our driveway, bulging with my clothes, my books, my entire world, looking like a grim procession of tombstones. My mother stood on the porch, her arms folded tightly across her chest, with my 3 older siblings positioned around her like a royal guard. There was no warmth in their faces, just a chilling, unified resolve. The massive smile I'd been wearing since my plane landed in Boston completely vanished as my mother spoke the words that sliced right through me. "You're 26 now. It's time for you to get out." Before I get into the rest of this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to follow along on this insane journey of family betrayal and finding strength I never knew I had. Growing up as the youngest of 4 in our suburban Boston home was a constant balancing act. My dad passed away when I was only 7. My oldest brother Mark was already 18 at the time. My sister Chloe was 16, and my other brother Ben was 14. They all had a solid decade or more of memories with him. For me, he was a ghost I could only really see in faded photographs. After he died, my mom, Helen, changed. The woman from my earliest memories, the one who laughed easily and gave warm hugs, seemed to calcify. She became someone who measured love in terms of achievement and absolute obedience. She worked 2 jobs to keep our family afloat, and she never let us forget it. "I gave up my entire life for you kids," became her constant refrain, a phrase that was almost always followed by, "The least you could do is..." Being the baby of the family came with a strange mix of perks and punishments. By the time I needed things like braces or help with college funds, Mom was more financially stable. But years of single parenthood had eroded her patience and warmth. She micromanaged every single part of my life with an iron will, from the friends I was allowed to have to the major I chose in college. My siblings had all marched down the paths she had pre-approved for them. Mark became a prestigious cardiologist. Chloe climbed the ladder to become a high-powered investment banker. Ben was a successful software developer for a major tech firm. They married the right people from the right families, bought houses in neighborhoods Mom sanctioned, and produced grandchildren on a timeline she deemed appropriate. They were her trophies, the living proof of her superior parenting. And then there was me. I chose to study marketing, not medicine or finance. I took a job at a small, energetic startup instead of a blue-chip corporation. And at 26, I was still stubbornly single. By normal standards, I wasn't a rebel, but in my family's world, I was the black sheep. "When are you going to get a real job, Maya?" Mom would sigh over our Sunday dinners. "Chloe was already earning 6 figures at your age." Despite all this friction, I'd made the choice to live at home after graduating from college. It was a practical decision at first. My entry-level salary was modest, to say the least, and the housing market in the Boston area was a nightmare. Living with Mom meant I could actually build some savings and start chipping away at my student loan debt. "You can stay for as long as you need to," she had told me when I first moved my boxes back in. Family always supports family, but that support was conditional, governed by unwritten rules I was expected to follow. I paid a monthly rent, contributed to the grocery bill, and ended up handling the majority of the household chores. I was her designated driver for appointments, her on-call tech support, and the sounding board for endless complaints about her neighbors, her colleagues, and sometimes my siblings, though never when they were actually around. The dynamic with my siblings was just as tricky. In their eyes, I was permanently frozen as the baby, the one whose thoughts and opinions were cute but ultimately irrelevant. Whenever a family disagreement came up, they would close ranks with Mom, forming a united front that dismissed my perspective as either naive or uninformed. "You'll get it when you have more life experience," Mark would say, patting my head condescendingly, completely ignoring that I'd lived on my own for 4 years in college and had traveled abroad, things he'd never bothered to do. The tug of war between my desire for independence and my sense of family duty became more intense as I got deeper into my 20s. My friends were all renting apartments together, dating freely, and staying out late without getting a barrage of texts demanding to know their location. I was deeply envious of their freedom, but I felt chained by my financial reality and a thick layer of guilt-laced obligation. Then, the opportunity I thought would change everything fell into my lap. My marketing firm landed a massive new client, and because I was the one on the team with the freshest, most innovative ideas, I was chosen to fly to San Francisco to present our campaign. It was my first ever business trip, my first time presenting solo to a major client, and it had the potential to be the big break my career desperately needed. The presentation was set for a Thursday, with follow-up meetings scheduled through Friday. I poured weeks into preparing, practicing my pitch over and over until the words were burned into my memory. The night before I left, Mom was unusually quiet and distracted at dinner, barely glancing up when I talked about my nervous excitement. "I'll be back late on Friday night," I told her, trying to sound cheerful. "Okay," she said, her eyes glued to her phone. "Mark and Chloe are bringing the kids over on Saturday. Make sure you're here to help out." I swallowed the lump of disappointment in my throat and promised I would be. A part of me, a small, hopeful part, believed this professional milestone would finally be the thing that earned her respect. If I could just prove that my career path was legitimate, maybe she would finally see me as an adult, not just her disappointing youngest child. The trip to San Francisco was better than I could have ever dreamed. The clients were blown away by our campaign. They requested only a few minor tweaks before they signed off on the 7-figure budget. My boss was ecstatic. He took me out to a fancy dinner afterward, and we talked about a potential promotion and a significant raise if the project launch went smoothly. "You have a real gift for this, Maya," he told me. "I see a very bright future for you at this company." Hearing those words felt warmer and more satisfying than the expensive wine we were drinking. For the first time, someone in a position of authority was seeing my potential, not just my perceived flaws. In the little free time I had, I bought gifts for everyone. I picked out a beautiful silk scarf for Mom, some craft beers from a local brewery for my brothers, and a sleek designer pen for my sister. They were small tokens of my success, peace offerings that I hoped could somehow bridge the gulf between us. On the flight home, I let myself daydream about sharing my victory at the family get-together the next day. Maybe Mark would finally stop asking when I was going to find a stable job. Maybe Chloe would stop forwarding me listings for administrative assistant positions at her firm. Maybe Ben would stop suggesting I go back to school for a master's degree to catch up with my peers. But most of all, I fantasized about my mom's reaction. In my daydream, her face lit up with genuine pride. I imagined her bragging to her friends about my big accomplishment, finally understanding that I was making my own way in the world, just on a different road than the one my siblings had taken. I had no idea that this fantasy of family validation was about to be shattered into a million pieces, replaced by a waking nightmare I could never have imagined. The spring afternoon that greeted me in Boston was perfect. The sun was shining after a week of dreary rain, and I took it as a good omen. My rideshare from Logan Airport hummed along smoothly. The gifts I'd bought were nestled in my carry-on, carefully wrapped in boutique tissue paper. My laptop bag, containing the signed contract that was about to transform my department's budget and my entire career, sat safely on my lap. I sent a text to my mom. Landed safely. On my way home, no reply came. That wasn't completely out of character. She often missed texts when she was busy with her gardening club or a church event. Still, a tiny, nervous flutter started in my stomach. Communication during my trip had been sparse. My check-in texts were met with one-word answers or, more often, just left on read. About halfway home, my phone buzzed. Mark's name flashed on the screen. My oldest brother almost never called me directly. He preferred the family group chat or just passing messages through Mom. "Hello?" I answered, my curiosity tinged with a growing sense of dread. "Where are you right now?" His tone was clipped and cold, the same professional voice he probably used with uncooperative patients. "I'm in a car on my way home from the airport. My flight got in a bit early. Is everything okay?" A long pause hung in the air, just long enough for my heart rate to kick into high gear. "Mom wants to talk to you when you get here. We all do." "About what? Is someone sick?" My alarm was quickly overtaking my confusion. "Just get home, Maya." He hung up before I could ask another question. My mind started racing. Had something happened to one of my nieces or nephews? Was Mom sick? Did a distant relative pass away? But none of those scenarios explained the ice in Mark's voice, or why we all needed to talk to me. I tried calling Chloe, then Ben. Both calls went straight to voicemail. I sent a frantic message to our family group chat, "What's going on?" But I only saw the read receipts pop up, with no one typing a response. A message my mom had sent the night before, which I'd barely registered at the time, now seemed sinister. "We need to discuss some changes when you return." The driver must have noticed my anxiety. "Everything all right back there, miss?" "Yeah, just family stuff," I managed, forcing a smile that felt more like a pained grimace. As we turned onto my street, everything looked deceptively normal. Kids were playing on their lawns, people were walking their dogs, retirees were tending their gardens. Our modest two-story house, with its familiar blue siding and white trim, came into view. And then I saw them, the black garbage bags. There must have been at least a dozen of them, lined up along the driveway like a barricade. And standing in the yard, 4 figures, their postures rigid and confrontational. I recognized them instantly. My mom, still in her gardening apron. Mark in his weekend polo shirt. Chloe looking impeccable in a business casual outfit even on a Saturday. And Ben, wearing the old university sweatshirt he practically lived in on his days off. "You can stop here," I told the driver, my voice sounding faint and distant. I quickly paid, grabbed my luggage, and stepped onto the sidewalk. The car pulled away, leaving me standing there, completely exposed before my family's silent, unified front. No one moved to help with my bags. No one smiled. "What is going on?" I asked, my feet feeling like lead as I approached. "What are all these bags?" Mom stepped forward, her lips pressed into a thin, hard line. "Your things are packed. It is time for you to find your own place." The ground seemed to drop out from under me. "What? Why? We never talked about this." "You are 26 years old," she continued, her voice flat, as if I hadn't even spoken. "All your siblings were out on their own by 23. You have overstayed your welcome." Mark nodded in stern agreement. "It's time you learned some responsibility, Maya." The sheer irony of his words was staggering. I was paying rent, doing chores, working a full-time job where I was excelling. By any sane definition, I was responsible. "This is insane," I said, my eyes darting from one stone-cold face to the next. searching for a single flicker of compassion. I just got back from a business trip. I have nowhere to go. You should have planned for that, Chloe said, glancing at her watch, as if my sudden homelessness was an inconvenience to her schedule. We all got apartments right after college. With Mom co-signing your leases and helping with security deposits, I shot back, a hot wave of anger finally cutting through the shock. And you all had much higher starting salaries in your approved professions. Excuses, Ben muttered, shaking his head. You've had 4 years since graduation to get your life together. I turned back to my mom, desperate. Why now? Why today? With no warning? I have been dropping hints for months that it was time for you to move on, she replied, her voice cold. You just chose not to listen. Dropping hints is not the same as giving someone notice. My voice started to rise, despite my best efforts to keep it steady. Normal families have conversations about big decisions. They don't pack up someone's life while they're away and ambush them the second they get home. Do not raise your voice to your mother, Mark warned, taking a step toward me. The absolute absurdity of it all hit me. I was being lectured on respect while being treated with the most profound disrespect I had ever experienced. My family had waited until I was 2,000 miles away to pack up my life in trash bags. And then it clicked. A stray comment I'd overheard between Mom and Chloe about rising property values in our neighborhood suddenly made sense. Are you selling the house? A flicker of something, surprise, guilt, crossed my mother's face before she smoothed it over. My financial decisions are not your concern. They are if they involve making me homeless overnight. You are not homeless, Chloe said with exaggerated patience. You have a job. Go rent an apartment like a normal adult, without references, without time to save for a deposit, without any warning. I looked at each of them, my voice pleading. Do you hear yourselves? Who does this to their own family? We are doing this for your own good, Mom insisted. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. By kicking them out from under me, I countered. A neighbor walking his dog slowed down, openly staring at the drama unfolding on our lawn. My humiliation was now a public spectacle. This is ridiculous, I said, lowering my voice. Let's just go inside and talk about this like adults. There is nothing left to discuss, Mom said flatly. The decision is made. Without any input from me, the person it actually affects. Your input has been your failure to launch, Ben chimed in. We all talked about it, and we all agree this is for the best. That sentence hit me like a punch to the gut. They had held a secret trial, discussed me, judged me, and passed sentence all without me even knowing. The gifts I had so carefully chosen for them, still in my bag, suddenly felt pathetic and foolish. When did you pack all this? I asked, gesturing at the row of black bags. Yesterday, Mom answered without a hint of remorse. Mark and Ben helped. The timing was so calculated, so cruel. They had waited until I was gone, where I couldn't argue or defend myself. So what am I supposed to do now? Tonight? Where am I supposed to sleep? You must have friends you can stay with, Chloe suggested, her tone implying she doubted I had any. Or just get a hotel, Mark added. You just got back from a business trip. Surely you can afford a room for a couple of nights. They had no idea the company had paid for my hotel in San Francisco, or that my small savings account was meant for a planned future move, one I had intended to discuss with my mom when the time was right. Can I at least go inside and sort through this stuff? I doubt you were careful. Everything you own is in those bags, Mom said, her voice final. Your room is empty. The finality of it all made my stomach clench. They hadn't just packed my things. They had erased me from the house while I was gone. A surge of white-hot anger burned through the shock and the hurt. All the years of feeling like I wasn't good enough, of trying to earn an approval that was always just out of reach, of walking on eggshells in what was supposed to be my own home. It all led to this one devastating moment of betrayal. "How dare you," I said, my voice low and shaking. "How dare all of you stand there and act so righteous while doing something this cruel?" "So dramatic," Chloe muttered under her breath. "Dramatic?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You ambush me, throw my entire life into trash bags, and tell me I'm homeless effective immediately. And I'm the one being dramatic?" "We knew you'd react this way," Mark said. "That's why we had to do it while you were gone." "You mean you waited until I wasn't here to fight back? That's not what responsible adults do. That's what cowards do." My mother's face flushed with rage. "Don't you speak to us like that. Not after everything I have done for you." "And what exactly have you done for me lately, Mom?" The words just spilled out. "You charged me rent. You made me your personal maid. You criticized every choice I've ever made, and you compared me to my successful siblings every chance you got." "You ungrateful little," she started. "Ungrateful?" I cut her off. "I have been nothing but grateful. I have helped you. I have supported you. I have listened to you. I have swallowed every single criticism and every single comparison, and I still showed up with love." The united front finally started to crack. My mother turned to Mark and Chloe. "I told you she would make this difficult." "Make what difficult?" I pressed. "Why now? Why the big rush? Why the garbage bags instead of boxes? Why did you need an audience?" I gestured to my siblings. Ben shuffled his feet, looking uncomfortable for the first time. It was the first sign that he wasn't entirely on board. "Mom's selling the house," he mumbled. "Ben!" Chloe hissed. "She deserves to know the truth," he shot back. And just like that, the truth came tumbling out in a messy, fragmented argument between them. Mom had gotten an all-cash offer on the house, way above the asking price. The buyers wanted to close quickly. And instead of talking to me, she and my siblings had decided that my share of the inheritance from Dad would be reduced to compensate for the years I had lived at home after college. "So this is about money," I said, the pieces clicking into place. "You're kicking me out to sell the house faster, and you're cutting my inheritance so you all get a bigger piece." "You haven't been contributing to the mortgage," Chloe argued. "I've paid you rent for 4 years," I countered. "Where do you think that money went?" "Your rent barely covered your food and utilities," Mom sniffed dismissively. "And what about Dad's will?" I asked, a memory from a lawyer's office long ago surfacing. "He left the house to all of us equally." The uncomfortable glances they exchanged said it all. Their silence was a confession. In that single, sickening moment of clarity, I made a decision. I walked over to my car, which was thankfully parked on the street, and popped the trunk. "What are you doing?" Mom demanded. "Leaving," I said simply. "Isn't that what you wanted?" One by one, I started hauling the heavy garbage bags and loading them into my hatchback, my entire life tossed together without any care. When the car was crammed full, I turned to face them one last time. They stood there, a perfect, impenetrable unit that I had never truly been a part of. "You know," I said, my voice strangely calm, "I just landed the biggest client in my firm's history. I was about to get a promotion. I actually brought gifts for all of you." I laughed, a soft, sad sound. "I really thought for a second that you'd finally be proud of me." "Maya," Ben started, a hint of regret in his voice. "No," I cut him off. "You've all made your positions perfectly clear. I won't stay where I'm not wanted." Then, to their utter astonishment, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just realized they had absolutely nothing left to lose. "Goodbye," I said, sliding into the driver's seat. "I hope the money was worth it." I drove away without a single glance in the rearview mirror. tears finally blurring the familiar streets until they looked like a foreign country. My phone immediately started buzzing, but I ignored it. I had no plan, nowhere to go. My hands were shaking so hard I had to pull over. I scrolled through my contacts and called the only person I knew I could trust. My college roommate, Olivia. Through heaving sobs, I explained what had just happened. "Come to my place." "Right now," she said, no hesitation in her voice. "You can stay as long as you need." Olivia lived in a small apartment about 30 minutes away with her boyfriend, Tyler. When I pulled up, they were already waiting outside. They helped me unload my life from the back of my car without a single judgmental question, setting me up in their tiny spare room, which they quickly turned into a sanctuary. That first night was the absolute lowest point of my life. I was curled up on an air mattress, surrounded by the trash bags I couldn't bring myself to open, cycling through waves of shock, grief, and pure rage. My phone kept buzzing. Olivia finally convinced me to look. The messages were just what you'd expect. Mom insisting I was overreacting. Mark lecturing me about being an adult. Chloe sending me links to apartment listings I couldn't possibly afford. Only Ben expressed a sliver of regret about how it was done, but not that it was done. "These people are toxic, Maya," Olivia said, reading over my shoulder. "You need to cut them off." "They're still my family," I whispered. "Family doesn't do this to you," Tyler added gently. "What they did was emotional abuse." Hearing that validation from people outside the situation was like a lifeline. It helped me see things more clearly. What they did wasn't normal. It wasn't my fault, and I didn't have to accept it. That night, I made 2 promises to myself. First, I would build a new life, completely on my own. And second, I would never, ever again let my self-worth be determined by their approval. As I finally drifted into an exhausted sleep, a tiny flicker of something new sparked beneath the pain. For the first time, I was completely, terrifyingly, and exhilaratingly free. The first week was a frantic blur. Olivia and Tyler were incredible, but I knew I couldn't impose on them in their 1-bedroom apartment forever. Their kindness was a buffer, giving me the breathing room I needed to figure out my next move without panicking. I spent my lunch breaks at work obsessively scrolling through apartment listings, and I quickly realized that Boston's rental market was a battlefield. Landlords wanted proof of income at 3 times the rent, a perfect credit score, first and last month's rent, a security deposit, and references I didn't have. My savings, which had felt like a decent cushion while I was living at home, now seemed laughably small. After more than a week of constant searching and rejections, I found a tiny studio in a neighborhood further out from the city. The landlord was an older man who was willing to overlook my lack of rental history if I paid a larger security deposit. The place was far from perfect. The paint was peeling, the appliances were ancient, and I could hear my neighbors through the paper-thin walls. But it was mine. It was a space where no one could throw my life out on the curb. Moving in really highlighted how little I had. My family had packed my personal things, but none of the basics. No dishes, no towels, no furniture other than what had been in my bedroom. Olivia took one look at the empty space and declared, "We are having a housewarming party." And the theme is practical essentials. True to her word, she organized a small get-together with our old college friends and a few of my work colleagues. People showed up with second-hand chairs, stacks of plates, and bags of cleaning supplies. By the end of the night, my empty studio had become a home, however basic. "It's not much," I apologized, as we ate pizza on the mismatched chairs. "It's a start," my friend Amber corrected. "And you did it all by yourself." That first month was a harsh lesson in financial reality. After paying my rent, utilities, and transportation, my once decent salary was stretched to its absolute limit. I became an expert at budgeting. creating spreadsheets for every penny, planning every meal, and learning which grocery stores had the best deals. Work became my refuge. That first Monday after the eviction, I went into the office early and threw myself into the San Francisco clients campaign. I channeled all my anger and hurt into my work, and it paid off. My boss noticed. "You've been on fire lately," he commented a couple of weeks later. "That presentation was a game changer, and your follow-up work has been flawless." "Thank you," I said, not bothering to explain the personal chaos that was fueling my professional focus. "We're restructuring the department," he continued, "and I want you to lead the new digital marketing team. It comes with a 15% raise." That promotion was a godsend. The extra money wouldn't make me rich, but it would lift the crushing weight of financial anxiety. More importantly, it was a massive validation of the career path my family had so casually dismissed. But while my professional life was taking off, my emotional life was a wreck. I had nightmares about being homeless. Loud noises in my apartment building would send me into a panic. I started having serious trust issues. "You should talk to someone," Olivia suggested gently over coffee one day. "Therapy is so expensive," I argued. "So is carrying all this trauma around," she countered. "Your new job has good health insurance. Use it." She helped me find a therapist who specialized in family estrangement. Our first session was like opening a floodgate. "What your family did to you was not just unkind. It was a profound betrayal," my therapist, Dr. Evans, affirmed. "Evicting a family member without any notice is cruel. The way they did it was calculated to humiliate you." Week by week, therapy helped me unpack years of emotional manipulation. I learned about terms like scapegoat and golden children and conditional love. Slowly, I started to rebuild my sense of self, separate from my family's judgment. I also started teaching myself all the things I'd never had to do before: how to fix a leaky faucet, how to change a tire, how to cook more than just pasta. Each small success was a tiny victory, proof that I could not only survive on my own, but thrive. About 3 months after I'd moved out, I ran into my brother Ben at a coffee shop. It was awkward and uncomfortable. "You look good," he said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "How have you been?" "I'm doing well," I said, and I was surprised to find it was true. I got promoted at work. That's great," he stammered. "Listen, Mom's been asking about you." "Has she?" I asked, my voice flat. "She has a funny way of showing it." "You're the one who cut off contact," he said defensively. "After being thrown out of my own home?" "Yes, I did." We stood there in a thick, uncomfortable silence. "She wants you to come for Sunday dinner," he finally said. "To talk." "On what terms?" I asked. "What do you mean? Does she admit that what she did was wrong? Is she planning to apologize? Or does she just expect me to show up and pretend like nothing happened?" His silence was the only answer I needed. There would be no apology, no acknowledgement. "I can't do that, Ben," I said softly. "I'm not the same person I was 3 months ago." "She's still your mother," he insisted. "Yes, she is," I agreed, and that didn't stop her from treating me like I was garbage. As I walked away, I could see he looked troubled. Maybe for the first time he was seeing our family in a new light. That chance encounter solidified my resolve. The path forward was still bumpy, but for the first time, I felt like I was the one steering. I was building a life that was entirely my own, and while it wasn't the life I had planned, it was becoming one I was deeply proud of. As the months passed, a quiet but profound shift happened inside me. The constant, gnawing anxiety that had been my shadow for so long began to fade, replaced by a steady, growing confidence. My new role at work was challenging and rewarding. I was leading a team, delivering results, and earning the respect of my colleagues and the company's leadership. Your team's latest campaign just boosted client engagement by 40%, our CEO said during a quarterly meeting. That is outstanding work, Maya. That public acknowledgement in a room full of my peers felt more real and satisfying than any crumb of approval I had ever begged for from my family. With my new salary, I was able to make practical upgrades. I traded in my old, unreliable car for a newer, safer one. When my lease was up, I moved out of the tiny studio and into a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in a safer, quieter neighborhood. It had huge windows that let in tons of natural light, and a small balcony where I started growing herbs. Furnishing this new place was an act of self-discovery. Free from my mother's critical eye, I found that I loved mid-century modern furniture and bold, vibrant colors. "This place feels like you," Olivia said the first time she visited. "Your old room at your mom's never did." And she was right. That room had been a time capsule of my teenage years, a space I just occupied. This apartment, even though I was still renting, felt like my first real home. My social life expanded too. I joined a book club and started volunteering at a local animal shelter on weekends. I met new people who knew me only as Maya, the competent marketing professional and avid reader, not as the disappointing youngest sibling. It was through a work project that I met Leo, a graphic designer. Our professional collaboration slowly blossomed into a friendship, and then a gentle, cautious romance. Unlike any relationship I'd had before, this one was free from my mother's constant scrutiny and judgment. It grew at its own pace. "So, tell me about your family," Leo asked one night over dinner. "It's complicated," I began, and then I gave him the short version of the story. His reaction was simple and validating. "Wow. They sound incredibly toxic. I'm so sorry you went through that. There was no, but they're still your family, no subtle victim blaming, just empathy." Meeting his family was another revelation. Their Sunday dinners were filled with laughter, respectful debates, and genuine interest in one another's lives. It was a painful but enlightening glimpse into what a healthy family could be. My therapy sessions went deeper. We moved past the initial crisis and started exploring the childhood patterns that had shaped me. "You're breaking a generational cycle, Doctor," Evans told me one day. That idea resonated deeply. Maybe my biggest victory wasn't the promotion or the new apartment, but the internal work I was doing to ensure these toxic patterns ended with me. This newfound strength started showing up in all areas of my life. I became more assertive at work, more confident in my ideas. I learned to set boundaries with friends. I even started a blog, anonymously at first, sharing practical tips for young adults navigating financial independence and family estrangement. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from people all over the world who saw their own stories in mine. "Your post about setting boundaries during the holidays helped me get through Christmas without a breakdown," one reader wrote. "Thank you." Helping others became a powerful part of my own healing. As the 6-month anniversary of my eviction approached, I realized something incredible. The family that had thrown me away had, in a twisted way, given me the greatest gift imaginable, the chance to find out who I really was. The journey had been excruciating, but the person I was becoming was worth every painful step. Exactly 6 months to the day after I found my life in garbage bags, my phone started vibrating and wouldn't stop. It was my mother. First one text, then 5, then a relentless flood of notifications. By the end of the day, I had counted 60 messages from her. They were a chaotic mix of accusations, frantic pleas, and guilt trips. "Where are you? Why won't you answer me? After everything I've done for you, you owe me a phone call. I need to talk to you. This is an emergency. Please, Maya, call me. The very last message, sent close to midnight, had a completely different tone. I made a terrible mistake. I need your help. Against my better judgment, I read every single one. Something was clearly very, very wrong. Something big enough to shatter my mother's impenetrable pride. Despite everything she had done, a small, stubborn flicker of concern ignited inside me. The next morning I called Ben. He was the one sibling who had shown even a hint of remorse. "What's going on with Mom?" I asked as soon as he picked up. He let out a long, heavy sigh. "She lost everything, Maya. All of it." The story came out in broken pieces, each one more shocking than the last. Mom had sold the house just as they'd planned. She'd ended up with a huge sum of money that should have set her up for a comfortable retirement. But instead of investing it safely, she had handed the entire amount over to a charismatic financial advisor she'd met through a friend at her church. It was a total scam, Ben explained, his voice hollow. The guy just vanished, took her money and the savings of at least 10 other people from her church. "That's awful," I said, and I meant it. No one deserved that. There was a long pause. "So, where is she staying now?" I asked. "Well," Ben said, hesitating, "that's part of the problem. She's been staying on Chloe's couch, but they had a massive fight. Chloe kicked her out. Mark says his house is too full with the kids. Her plan was to move in with you." A cold wave of disbelief washed over me. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it was breathtaking. After throwing me out like a piece of trash, my mother's backup plan was to move into the new life I had built from the ashes of the one she'd destroyed. "That is not happening," I said, my voice firm and clear. "I know," Ben said, surprising me. I told her that was completely unreasonable. "But she needs help, Maya. She's still our mom." This was it, the ultimate test of the boundaries I had worked so hard to build. What did I owe the woman who had raised me, but who had also betrayed me so deeply? After talking it over with Dr. Evans, I agreed to meet my mother. We chose a neutral coffee shop. Leo offered to wait in his car nearby, a silent promise of support and a quick getaway if I needed it. When my mother walked in, she looked smaller. The confident, intimidating posture was gone, replaced by a nervous slump. She looked like she had aged a decade in 6 months. "Thank you for coming," she started, her hands trembling around her coffee cup. "I didn't think you would." "I almost didn't," I replied honestly. The silence between us was heavy with unspoken history. "I lost it all, Maya," she finally whispered. "The house, the money, everything." "Ben told me." I paused. "He also told me that Mark and Chloe won't talk to you. They say I betrayed the family's legacy," she said, her voice cracking. I just nodded, letting her feel the sting of her own logic. "I need help, Maya. I have nowhere else to go." There it was, the unspoken request hanging in the air. She expected me, the daughter she had cast aside, to be her savior. 6 months ago, I would have caved instantly, desperate for the chance to finally prove my worth. But now, I saw the situation with a painful, crystal clarity. "Do you have any idea what you did to me?" I asked, my voice quiet but firm. She blinked, clearly thrown off. "I was trying to teach you to be independent. By ambushing me, by packing my life into trash bags while I was on a business trip, by humiliating me in front of the entire family. I admit, I may have handled it poorly," she conceded, "but my intentions were good." "Your intentions?" I let out a dry laugh. "Your intention was to sell the house for a profit without telling me, and then cut my share of the inheritance. You treated me like a problem to be disposed of, not a daughter." Tears welled in her eyes. "I made mistakes." "Yes," I agreed. "You did. And now you're facing the consequences, just like I had to face the consequences of your actions 6 months ago." So you're not going to help me? Indignation started to creep back into her voice. After all my sacrifices? I didn't say that, I corrected her. I said I'm willing to help, but it will be on my terms, not yours. I laid out the plan I had carefully constructed with my therapist. I would help her find an affordable senior living apartment. I would contribute a small, fixed amount to her rent each month. But I would not let her move in with me. I would not give her large sums of money. And we would not go back to the old, controlling dynamic. That's your idea of help? She asked, aghast. That is what I can offer while still respecting myself and the life I have built, I replied. Take it or leave it. We talked for nearly 2 hours. It was a painful cycle of tears, accusations, and tiny tentative steps toward something resembling understanding. She struggled to accept that our relationship had been permanently altered by her choices. I never thought you'd be so hard, she said at one point. I never thought I'd have to be, I countered. In the end, we reached a fragile agreement. I would help her with the housing applications, and she would agree to attend family therapy sessions with me as a condition of my continued support. As we were getting up to leave, she asked the one question that showed how little she still understood. When can things just go back to normal between us? I looked her straight in the eye with a new kind of compassion that was strong, not weak. They can't. That normal is gone forever. Maybe we can build something new, something healthier, but we can never go back. Her face fell as the reality of that statement finally landed. And in that moment, I felt the anger that had been my constant companion for months finally loosen its grip. I saw her not as a monster, but as a flawed, broken person whose own bad choices had cost her everything. That didn't excuse what she'd done, but it allowed me to act from a place of strength, not just pain. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I knew I would be okay. That night, I got messages from both Mark and Chloe for the first time in months. They weren't apologies. They were thinly veiled attempts to figure out my mother's financial situation and how much I was getting involved. I left them both on red. Some relationships I was learning could be repaired. Others were best left in the past. The family crisis that started with 60 desperate text messages didn't end with a fairy tale reconciliation. It ended with something far more real and valuable. The confirmation that the boundaries I had built were not just important, they were essential. My new life was worth protecting at any cost. In the weeks that followed, I kept my promise. I helped my mother find a small studio apartment in a senior living facility called Pine Meadows. It was a huge downgrade from our family home, but it was safe and clean. It's so small, she commented as we moved in her few remaining boxes. So was my first apartment, I reminded her gently. The irony was not lost on her. For the first time, she was experiencing the very vulnerability she had so carelessly inflicted on me. Our weekly therapy sessions were difficult, but slowly they started to work. I never realized how much my own mother's controlling behavior affected how I raised you, she admitted one day. It didn't erase the past, but it provided context. I contributed a modest amount to her rent each month, as promised, an arrangement that kept our boundaries clear. My relationship with Ben continued to heal. He eventually offered a sincere apology for his role in what happened. I should have stood up to them, he said. I knew it was wrong. His honesty opened the door for a new, more authentic sibling relationship. Jackson remained distant, his pride a wall between us. I was okay with that. The most surprising change came from Chloe. A few months later, her husband left her, and she found herself a single mother struggling to maintain her lifestyle. I never understood what it felt like to have your world fall apart overnight, she confessed in a tearful phone call. I think I'm starting to get it now. It was a start. Meanwhile, my own life continued to blossom. A year after my promotion, I was offered the position of Director of Marketing. With the significant salary increase, I was finally able to do something I had only dreamed of: buy my own home. I found a charming little condo in a neighborhood I loved. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room and just cried. This was mine, earned by me, chosen by me. No one could ever take it away. I threw a housewarming party and invited all the people who had become my new family: Olivia, Tyler, Leo, my work friends, and even Ben. A toast, Olivia announced, raising her glass. To Maya, who turned a pile of garbage bags into a beautiful home, all on her own. The reference to that horrible day no longer stung. It was just a part of my story, the origin story of my strength. The work of healing is never truly finished, but I found a new sense of purpose. I started a small scholarship fund to help young adults who were aging out of the foster system or leaving toxic family situations, providing small grants to help with security deposits or professional clothes. "You've turned your pain into purpose, Doctor," Evans said. "That's the definition of healing. My relationship with my mother will never be simple, but we are building something new, something based on honesty and respect, not control." During one of our last therapy sessions, she said something I never thought I'd hear. "I'm proud of you, Maya, not just because of your job. I'm proud of the person you've become." Her approval was nice to hear, but it was no longer something I needed to feel whole. That, I realized, was the greatest freedom of all. The journey that started with those garbage bags at the gate ended with the keys to my own front door. In losing the family I thought I needed, I found the life and the person I was always meant to be. Have you ever had a moment of betrayal that ultimately made you stronger? How did you rebuild your life when everything fell apart? Share your own story in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe if my journey resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings are just the beginning of a much more beautiful story. Thank you for listening.